Hello, hello, and welcome to Missy's Imaginings. I have taken the weekend to just hang out, and currently I am just resting in my PJs, so I'm going to do a quick hello here and let you know that in this video we are moving on to the yellow coat outfit. So we've finished the red one and we finished the orange one, and in this video we're going to put together the pieces for the yellow outfit. So here we go. So for Jimmy's set, we have the outfit in yellow, and he'll have a black t-shirt and printed pants. Then parts of the coat will be in that print as well, and there is a cap. So starting with the shirt, this is the smaller t-shirt. It is sewn exactly the same way as we did the other shirts, so we won't go over how to sew that because it's just like the t-shirt we did for the red outfit. It's just that I used the smaller set of pieces. I used the bias tape for the neckband, so it's all sewn exactly the same. It's a cotton, and so it has a full open back. Here, if I can undo my snaps. There we go. Here we dun, 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 dun. And there we go. So yeah, it has a full open back, the same finishing on the inside. So that shirt is already explained, so we don't need to use time on sewing the t-shirt. It's just not stretchy, so it's got an open back. Other than that, it's the same as Shuga's, and then it is exactly the same as J-Hope's in the front one. Okay, then we have the cap. So we have two pieces for the brim of the hat, and then the band of the hat, and then the top. So I've went ahead and transferred all the lines in this hat onto the ultra leather, faux leather vinyl. So that's all ready to go. Then the pants are, I believe these are the slim cut pants. So I'll have to check it against my pattern pieces when we get there. But I think the only thing we're going to do about this that would be different is the omission of the front pleats, because it won't have any. And then everything else will be exactly the same. And then I'll fit the doll and add the back darts when it's on the doll. But other than that, it's pretty basic. It's all the same as sewing the other pants, so we probably won't go over those steps. And of course you can check out the series to see the other items like the shirts and the pants that are sewn, but it's kind of like there's only 3 pair of pants, and the only difference is there's no pleats in this one. So that'll move along to the side. So then we look at the coat. This coat also has a lot of pieces. So just like in the other shirt type coat, there's a back facing and front facings, which I will first separate that little thread that didn't get cut. There we go. And I will sew these at the shoulder. So the back facing will be sewn to the front facing at the shoulder, and then I will serge around the entire outside edge of the facing so that that edge will be finished fabric. Then on this coat, the part of the collar that's going to show will be print fabric, which I thought would just be kind of fun. So the inside of the collar will be this print, and then the outside will be the faux leather in yellow. And I did choose the bright yellow, which I really like. Then on the little placard tabs, just to save myself one seam, I just took the 2 pieces and eliminated the seam allowance, and then did it so I could just fold it in half. So it would be folded like so. And then I only have to sew up one side and around the point, because this edge I don't have to sew because it's just folded. But you can still cut out you know, all the pieces and sew them together. I just took one step of sewing out. And so I'll just be sewing up the side and then the placard, and then once you turn it right side out, let's see, we'll get this here, then imagine if the seam allowance were gone, then that point is going to even out to be correct, because it won't have the seam allowance anymore. So for the two back ones, it has a point on each end, so I have both of those. And then on the front, we have one on each side, so I have the two cut for the both sides of the front of the coat. Then we have a back yoke. We have the front of the jacket. We have the sleeves, and then the back of the jacket will have a pleat. Now, in the coat type, the shirt type coat we did for Shuga, we put the pleat on the outside like an Oxford type shirt, but on this one I am going to put the pleat towards the inside, so it will be like this. So it's going to be with the pleat towards the inside on this coat, so it will be sewn differently than the other one. So that's going to be put, I'll fold that to where these lines match like this, and then I will press it down from the inside on the cloth side just to kind of help that lay a little bit better. And then once I get that where it's laying correctly and I press it, then I will be stay stitching across the top so that I could fit it onto the back yoke. Then the seam allowance will be turned up towards the yoke, and then it will be top stitched along the edge of the yoke. So that will be preparing the back piece. On the sleeves, I will just hem the end of the sleeve. There's nothing fancy on the sleeves. And then on the edge, I'll probably do a basting stitch along the top of the shoulder to get that ready. And I'll have to look at my drawings because I can't remember if we have a little placard on the sleeve or not. I'll have to double check my drawings, and I may need to cut a couple more of these, which is fine because I have more. So I can cut a couple more of these if I want those for the sleeve, just so that you can see that put together the way it is in the pictures. So once I have the back yoke put on, then I will be putting the coat back and front together at the shoulders, and then yeah, putting all the little placards together. And so once I get like all the prep sewing done, then we'll take a look at the start of the assembly. The collar also will be sewn with right sides together, and then I will trim away the seam allowance, flip it right side out, and top stitch along the edge to get that ready. So those are the steps we're going to do to start on the yellow coat. Here's what we have done so far. So the front and back have been put together. So here is the back of the jacket with the yoke, and the top stitching is done on the back of the yoke as well as the shoulders, just to help keep this seam allowance flat. So that's done. And then I hemmed the sleeves, so that's done. Set that here, there we go. Then we have the facing is all done and serged around the edge, and I went ahead and used black since there's a black print in the fabric, as well as it's going to have a black cap and a black t-shirt. So I went ahead and just did the black there because I didn't want to take the time to change out my serger machine tonight. Then I have the collar, so the front and back of the collar is done, and that is all top stitched as well. And then I put a small notch right here to mark the center back of the collar. Okay, so my next step is I have all my little tabs done. So on the sleeves, I'm going to be sewing a tab right here, and I'll just stay stitch to hold it in place. And then I'm going to attach this end to the sleeve with a button
So I'll just be putting a button here and sewing that on, and then I'll do the same on this sleeve. So I'll have the next tab here, sew that on, and sew this on and down with a button. Then I have the 3 for the one side of the jacket that will be sewn on the front of the jacket like this, and then I will put a button on each one of those. And they're just decorative, so they don't need to have any type of a fastener attached or anything like that. So they just will be tacked down. Then on the back, we have the back here, and I have the tabs ready for the back of the jacket as well. And they will be sewn on with buttons as well. So they'll be sewn down with buttons. So I do have some handwork to do before I go ahead and put in the sleeves. So these 2 pieces and then all my other little tabs need to be sewn on and then buttons placed. And I'll have to look. I'm not sure if I'm going to go ahead and use black buttons or just yellow buttons. I have to kind of see what I have on hand, and we'll kind of go with whatever I have available. So all this handwork needs to be done before we put in the sleeves. So that will be my next batch of work. And oh my goodness, there is nothing that helps an outfit come together like hardware. So I was looking through my buttons and I just wasn't happy with the buttons, and so I decided to go with little gold pearl beads instead. And I must say I do love it. So I have all of the little plaques, tabs sewn in place, and they're all anchored with their little gold bead buttons. And here's the back. Very happy with how it's turning out so far. I really like it. So yes, I think that was the best choice. The black just seemed too, I don't know, too ta-da. I don't know. It just seemed too much. And then I already have black on the orange coat, so I wanted something different. And then the yellow buttons they just didn't have any pizzazz. So I thought, oh, but I do have these gold beads. Let's see how that looks. And I do love it. So there we go. Just my own personal preference, so maybe somebody might have liked the black better or the yellow better, but I really like these little pearl beads. So my next step will be to put in the collar, and I'm holding the camera with one hand, so I'll try to do this one-handed. So here we go. So to put the collar in, we'll turn our coat with the right side out. There we go. I'm going to have the print side up because the print side is like the inside of the collar. So I'm going to start at the center back, and I'm going to, and this is going to be really tough because if I want to pin this in, I have to pin within a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it's going to be really tricky, but I'm going to try it. So we're going to pin this in the center back, and then we're going to snip along this curve so it will open a little bit easier, and then snip along this curve just so we can kind of make those straight lines so it will feed into the machine a little bit better. And I'm going to pin from the center back to the front, and then the center back to the front, and then that will be sandwiched between the right side of the coat and the right side of the facing. So let's just kind of lay it on here. So the facing then will be sewn like this. Move the sleeve. Okay, so then we'll sew the facing on, and once I will probably stay stitch the collar just because this is all very, very thick and gets hard to maneuver when there's a lot of layers. So I'll stay stitch the collar in place, then I'll put the facing on so the collar will be sandwiched between the right sides of the facing and the right side of the coat. I will start at the hemline, and sew up the front, around the neck, and then back down the other front to put the facing in. And then to put in the sleeves, let's turn it this way, I will be putting, and I'll have to make sure I have the right sleeve in the right spot, so I will be putting the right side of the sleeve to the right side of the coat, and then I will have a basting stitch around the top of the shoulder on the sleeve just to kind of gather it so I can fit it a little bit better. And then on these I will work from the outside toward the shoulder, and then this as well will work from the outside of the shoulder to get the sleeves put into this arm socket right here. So I'll get all that done, and then once the sleeves are in, we turn the coat so it's inside out. We'll pretend that that sleeve is in place, and then we simply sew from the cuff of the sleeve up to the underarm and down the side. And then I'll have to think about whether or not I'm going to top stitch those seam allowances on the side, just to kind of flatten them out, and then hem it. Then the last thing I'll need to do is put the snap closures on the front that will be in these 3 locations on the inside. So that's the last I need to do to finish up Jimin's coat. The t-shirt and the coat are now complete. So the t-shirt has the snaps opening in the back because it's just cotton. Then we have the coat, and somehow I managed to put the sleeves on the wrong side. So instead of my little tabs being on the front, they ended up on the back. I double checked. I have no idea how I managed that, but it still looks okay. So I'm not gonna try to take them out, because once this faux leather is sewn in, if you take it out, then you have to try to cover holes to make sure no holes show. So I'm not going to do all that. So here are the snaps. There's just 3 snaps, and because it's a little like flared coat design, I am not going to add any more snaps to the bottom, because I want it to slightly flare out just a little bit. And then on the back it does have that silhouette that I wanted, so it does flare just a little bit on the back. There we go. So there's the back of the coat, and I love how that turned out. So there's the jacket. Next will be the pants, and I won't show sewing the pants. They're going to be the same as every other pair of pants that we've done. The only difference is I don't have to worry about any pleats on the front, because this pair doesn't have any pleats. And in the back, I will just fit the pants to the doll in order to see how deep to take the dart in the back. So they will have a dart in the back, but as far as the depth, I'll know that once I get it on the doll. So those are pretty simple. So I'll get the pants done off camera. Then our next order of business is the cap. So let's take our pieces out. And I did all my handwork at work the other day, so I have all my fun little sewing supplies here. So on the cap, we need to, and I realized after I was in bed, actually, that you actually need to cut 2 bands, because I was thinking I need to fold the band like this, and then there would be 1 seam allowance, but that's not going to work because I have to be able to put the brim into the band. So we actually need to cut 2 bands. So I'll be cutting an additional band so we can put the brim in. So first I will take the brim, and I'm going to sew, make sure my center is matched, and I'm going to sew along the outside edge of the brim, and then I'm going to trim away any extra seam allowance. Then I'll turn it right side out, and then I'm going to top stitch that front edge of the brim, and then I will probably stay stitch the inside edge of the brim where it attaches to the cap, sort of like when you're doing the collar. Then here I have all of the pleats marked. So basically the line where the arrow is going to be folded toward me, if my thumb will work, and then it's going to match up to this line. Now I got to get my clips. We'll see if I can do this without spilling all my clips. I did that the other day. Sorry, my voice is all froggy again. I'm hoping we're not getting sickness, but that it's just allergies. Okay, then I'm going to move that to this line. Clip. This one goes. And I'm not going to worry about folding it totally at an angle if it messes a little bit, as long as this position is moved to the straight position, like this. Get that moved there. And this one, move here. And I'm going to do that all the way around and get all those pleats put in the position where they go. And that's going to create the round top of our cap. Then in the back, there's a squiggle line on the pattern. That I usually put a gather, just by hand. I use a needle and thread. I just double my thread. And I go in and out here. I have a knot on one end, but loose on the other, so I can pull that on the thread so that the back edge will be slightly more, rather than pleated, it'll be gathered to fit the band. Because when I put the band, I'll have two, but when I sew the ends of the band together, this is really long, so it can accommodate whatever doll you're doing and whatever wig the doll might be wearing. So I don't sew this until I've actually put it on the doll to see where I'm going to want to close the end of the band. So because the band is extra large, so it can fit to a variety of heads and what wig they're going to be using, this gathering allows for the top of the hat to fit whatever size this ends up being. So it's kind of like multi-sizes in one. So this back portion is not pleated, but gathered to fit and ease into the band once it's sewn together. So I'm going to complete all the pleating, and then I'm going to stay stitch those in place from this around the front and back to the back, leaving this just plain so it can be gathered to fit. So I'll get that much done. I'll cut out my additional band and I'll get the brim ready, and then we'll come back and look at the next steps. Here is the doll that I'm going to be using the hat, who will most commonly wear the hat. So what I've done is I've had both of my bands cut. So I'm just going to show here when I have the doll with the wig on, and I go ahead and think of like a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's going to sit pretty loosely with the wig on. Oh, this wig's coming off here. There we go. So I think I'll go ahead and make this seam more like 3/8 of an inch. And then if I set that on there, then it's going to be able to sit, well, it's still a little big. So I'm going to go ahead and do a 1/2 inch. Let's see here. About a 1/2 inch. And then let it sit kind of on top of his head. And I think that'll be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make the back seam a 1/2 inch. Before I actually sew the back seam, I am going to line up the center front of the band and the brim, and I'm going to sandwich the brim between the right sides of the band Then my ends will meet over here. So I'm going to go ahead and sandwich that in and clip it down. There we go. And then this will have all those raw edges flush together. And here again, just like when doing the collar, as I'm actually sewing this, I'm going to make sure that this corner is caught inside the seam allowance, so that once it's sewn together and we open that up, it's all completely tucked into the seam, because you don't want the end of that sticking out, which is kind of easy to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all clipped together, and then I'm going to sew just from one end to the other to put the brim inside the band. With the brim now sewn into the band, I'm going to put the band ends together, and I'm going to open up the seam allowance on both sides, and then I'm going to sew this with that 1/2 inch seam allowance to sew the ends together. Then once it's together, I'm going to top stitch the edge of the band along here. That will help make sure that stays laying flat like this, and it also helps keep the brim in place. So now that the ends of the brim were put together and I top stitched around the edge of the band that has the brim, the next step is going to be to attach the cap. But in order to attach the cap, I only want to attach it to the outside of the brim. So I'm going to turn the inside back in, and it'll be a little wonky because you've already sewn this top stitching. So we have this here, and then we're going to flip it so that the good side is on the inside, so it's inside out and the bands are open. Then we're going to match up the center front of the cap to the center front of the band. So I've got a green line here and my fingernail there. Alright, we'll clip this in place. Oh, there we go. I want to turn it around. Okay, so we clip the center front. Now I'm going to fit in the cap of the hat into the band, keeping the edge flush. And I'll be clipping this, and I'm going to go all the way around both sides, and then I have my needle and thread have been tacked into the back. Hopefully that will show. There, that might show a little better. So now I can pull the one end and use that to fit this into the band, and then I'll release, you know, any that is not tight enough, or tighten to where it actually fits inside the band. So it looks like it's going to be tightened all the way. So all that gathering will be pulled taut to where my edges line up and it fits, and then all I have to do is knot this, and I'll probably actually anchor it to the band as well and tie that off, and then go ahead and sew the cap to just that one side of the band, keeping this edge free so it doesn't get caught in the stitching. Now with the cap top sewn to the band, we can flip it all right side out. There we go. Now the band will be sewn, I guess I should just leave it inside out. We're going to take the band and flip the band up. Now I will take one, the seam allowance, 1/4 inch seam allowance, turn it up and then catch the seam allowance from the cap to the band inside and go ahead and hand stitch this in place just like this, so that once you're finished, all that seam allowance is inside the band. So it'll look like this. So we turn it in and then stitch along that seam line. So we're just going to hand stitch all this in place all the way around, and then that finishes up the cap and make sure that all that seam allowance is inside. There we go. So it kind of look like this once we get it sewn, and then on the outside our cap will be complete. So that's what our cap will look like. Here is our completed outfit for the yellow coat outfit for Jimin. So we got the printed pants that are no pleat in the front, just a narrow leg pant with the darts in the back. Then we have the coat with the 3 placards on one side, and then on the sleeves, and then the 2 on the back. So there we go. It's kind of wonky how it's hanging there. And then the yoke on the back. Then again the placard on the sleeve, and then the cap is all finished. So all in all, I'm very happy with the yellow outfit. So our series is coming together. So now we have the yellow outfit done. And next will be the green coat for V. So stay tuned. Bye.